animal agriculture is a nightmare that we haven't awakened from. We nonchalantly continue to increase animal production and consumption. It feels like more of us should have learned by now, as awareness of the madness has increased in recent years. Is a moral awakening too late? In the early 2000s, everyday people weren't so desensitized to violence. Murder, war, and blood were taken much more seriously back then. Today, we joke about it, even calling for it in the case of CEOs, for example. Perhaps if we had been as aware of what we're doing to the animals back then, we would have significantly changed by now. But the reality is, we've just continued the nightmare and have become desensitized to the violent enslavement and torture of 90 billion every year. Worse, we're seeing a surge of excuses for the continuing of the nightmare, desperate attempts to escape accountability. There are now pushbacks and small rebellions in the resistance to fighting veganism. There's a growing shift in attention to only meat diets and homesteading or anti-seed oils. This is fundamentally because people feel like there's a moral attack on their livelihoods. The way things are supposed to be are being challenged, and they feel threatened by veganism, that one day it might be the new norm. Well, that gut feeling may end up being correct. Now is the calm before the moral storm. Even though veganism is in principle a reduction of harm and protection of rights for others, something most of us preach about in the case of humans, people still claim they want to protect nature selectively. Take a beautiful forest. The thought of ripping away trees from national forests for lumber or killing baby orangutans in a forest for palm oil, that angers us upon finding out about it. Still, the unjustified disparity between wild and domestic animals continues to go largely unseen and unheard. But this kind of deliberate negligence and moral injustice isn't the only time this has happened in human history, only to be eventually eradicated. The abolition of slavery was a long and complex process that unfolded over centuries, varying by region, culture, political systems. It wasn't a single event, but a series of movements and laws, rebellions, societal shifts that created the change. It took everyday people to push discussions and debates about their concerns for the welfare of others. Overall, their persistence eventually got many governments around the world to legislate the end of slavery. However, even then, there were resistance movements throughout, and there were waves of resistance in favor of slavery. Pro-slavery advocates conjured up excuses to continue slavery as talks to end it became prevalent. They used economic arguments for slavery, cultural arguments, using the Bible as justification. As anti-slavery sentiment grew, it sparked the formation of smuggling networks in the American South, to the point that it caused a surge in slave demand. Southern states also banned anti-slavery literature and media. They even fought a war to protect slavery. We now know how that war ended for them, but the war that we will be fighting this time in the case of animal agriculture and exploitation will not be a physical battle, but a mental battle. Around the world, nations gradually banned slavery in non-violent ways. Much of the motivation to end slavery was driven by the slaves themselves revolting. But animals can't revolt. They can't speak for themselves or stir up movements within their respective communities to fight for them. This vegan movement will have to emerge from deep within ourselves, a moral awakening only the oppressors can initiate. The Industrial Revolution in the 18th and 19th centuries enabled a shift from slave work to machine work. As machines mass-marketed, slavery became comparatively less profitable. Machines could perform some tasks much more effectively than slaves, and machines didn't need housing or food. This further aided the adoption of anti-slavery legislation, and so just as technology can aid a moral awakening in slavery, so can it aid in the case of animal farming. cultivated meat, or commonly called lab-grown meat, and plant-based alternatives are scaling fast. By 2035, they could slash factory farming's dominance. If beef is grown in a vat, cruelty becomes virtually a non-issue. But if we cheer its potential to end slaughter, it'll also spark debates. Ethics might split. Some people in response to this might double down on traditional animal products, while others are deeply moved by the introspection it causes. Many of us are still detached from the process of animal slaughter. Many completely just forget it. The cheap price and cost of cultivated meat will likely cause rapid adoption across the world and serve as a stark reminder of how barbaric traditional animal slaughter is. It'll create lots of debate and discussion, just as any transformative technology does. Science and technology will be a far more powerful source for a moral awakening than we think. Neuroscience continues to demonstrate that animals feel more than we previously thought. Pigs problem solve, turkeys show an ability for language, cows can experience depression and anxiety when they're removed from their babies. Mapping the brain of a fruit fly has just been achieved this year. The entire connectome of millions of synapses. We can now determine exactly where in the brain, down to the exact neural network of a fruit fly, specific thoughts come from. By the 2030s, AI-driven studies could map animal consciousness so clearly that denying their rights would feel archaic. Politically, this could fuel laws granting personhood to some species, like dolphins and apes, like New Zealand has recently done. The paradigm is shifting from the "they're ours to use" to "they deserve respect." Pushback will obviously come from industries like fishing or dairy, but expect many to make the excuse that it'll take away jobs, versus others who might suggest it's taken away souls. But as global consciousness rises with the understanding that animals are conscious and more emotionally capable than we think they are right now, so too will legislation that protects them. It will simply take more exposure to the facts. Another technological breakthrough that will be a major catalyst for the upcoming moral awakening is robotics. As we speak, many of the largest tech companies in the world are racing to build advanced humanoid robots. By 2035, there could be humanoid robots in 30 to 40% of households in the developed world. Many of these robots will be extremely human-like, made of skin-like material, expressive facial features, intelligence on par or exceeding our own. They'll be as capable as we are. Studies from places like MIT's Media Lab suggest people already form emotional bonds with simple robots like Roomba vacuum cleaners. The paradigm will shift greatly with the widespread adoption of humanoid robots, who will play very important roles in our lives, nearly like family members do. And they will cause immense amounts of deep introspection within us. In our interactions with robots, we'll be reminded of our human nature. Already, a couple of famous influencers have purchased basic humanoid robots, like Kai Cenat, for example. He recently posted content of him interacting with the robot, dressing it up, and you talk to it like he would a person, but in a very derogatory manner. In fact, at one point in the video, he says that he got himself his own slave and begins to yell commands at it. Then, as he gets used to it, he starts punching the robot to the ground and kicking it. Now, clearly, some of that behavior was driven to garner attention and views, but this still demonstrates something about the human nature. When we recognize something as inferior to us or non-sentient, we feel it's easier and justified to dominate over it and abuse it. Seeing a humanoid robot take abuse without retaliation might make many people pause and reflect on their own capacity for cruelty. On Twitter, a 2023 poll I came across showed that 68% of respondents felt uneasy watching a robot dog get kicked in the demo video. And current robots contain a fraction of the complexity that the next generation of robots will have. So, as common people get access to these humanoid robots and have similar interactions with it, this is going to spark ethical debates as to how we should treat robots. And that's only going to further force the awareness of human behavior and animal welfare. Another influencer, Kim Kardashian, has posted photos of her and her humanoid robot online. She's seen holding hands with the robot, sitting on its lap. In a video, she even teaches the robot how to blow a kiss, and she called it her new friend. This is another sign that humanoid robot companions will be very prevalent in the upcoming years. A good amount of internet consumption is sex-related, and so it's no real surprise that soon sex robots will make up a large fraction of the industry, with the customization of realistic skin and certain body parts. For some, it might just be a guilt-free outlet. No consent issues, no messy human dynamics. But that's where the introspection kicks in. If people start treating robots as replacements for humans, projecting fantasies, aggression, even violence onto them, it could shine a light on what's really lurking deep within our sexual psyche. It'll again stir up deep introspection regarding how we sexually interact with others and make us more aware of our harsh human tendencies. Studies like those from the Journal of Sexual Research in 2022 suggest that porn already desensitizes some people to real-life intimacy because we are in a way removed from the content. It's not real. There are no real people in your phone or computer. So sex robots could amplify this desensitization to real-life sexual activity as well. But if the robots are capable of mimicking distress and being human-like in their response, say a flinch or they make audible noises, it might flip the script entirely. Suddenly you're face to face with a simulation of suffering. And that could spark a, what am I doing moment, forcing people to consider the harm that they can unknowingly be causing in exchange for their own pleasure. And there's more. Virtual reality. As technology over the next decade increasingly enables virtual reality worlds or simulations to be indistinguishable from real life, and not just in terms of visuals, but sounds and smells, even feelings being simulated, people will further be faced with the consequences of their own actions. Now, it's fair to say that all kinds of virtual realities will be created, with the help of AI especially, and that people will be spending a significant portion of their lives in VR worlds. But instead of just mimicking the visuals of the real world, brain interfaces will enable feelings to also be simulated. So, imagine a VR experience where you become a caged hen, feeling the confinement, hearing the distress, seeing the bleak conditions firsthand. Or maybe one where you're in the body of a stressed out dairy cow, and as you feel the virtual crush of the milking stall, you see the VR flash a little graph on your screen for brain activity, syncing it to the thudding heartbeat you hear, like the cow's cortisol levels are spiking. Or perhaps you're a mother elephant now, and you hear a calf's distant cries as poachers drag it away. The AI will amplify the sound and mimic a trembling trunk trying to reach out. Perhaps then, people will finally understand what it's like. Think of how videos of animal mistreatment spark outrage online. The ones that we're most exposed to are the ones of people kicking their cats or neglecting their dogs. However, the ones that often are purposely hidden from us are far worse. Images and videos inside of slaughterhouses. Now, we simply are not exposed to what really happens in slaughterhouses, and currently, many people remain unaware of them. However, I think that with the introduction of human-like robots in our daily lives and the increase in VR use in the upcoming decade, the mirror it'll hold up to us will be unsettling. We'll no longer be able to easily suppress or forget the evil side of human nature. It'll be reinvigorating for planetary consciousness. Now, there will be other factors that will continue to shape our ethics in the coming decades. Climate change as more disasters occur, further governmental pushes to reduce emissions will make animal agriculture more expensive to maintain. Pandemics, as we continue to use antibiotics, most of it goes to livestock, it'll breed resistance, threatening public health. As diseases spill over to humans, these crises will force a paradigm shift in animal agriculture. Governments could ban factory farming or subsidize alternatives. And some steps like this are happening already, including raising costs for industrial meat. And if cultivated meat scales and climate policies tighten, legislation could phase out animal agriculture gradually. But the main challenge to ending animal agriculture is that systemic speciesism. It's ingrained in all of us. That has to be deeply rinsed away if fundamental change is to occur. And just as in past moral paradigm shifts throughout human history, the discussion must continue. And the future looks promising, even though there will be waves of resistance and battles will be fought. This should not be discouraging us. Since the 2010s, social media has enabled an explosion of debates and discussions. Simply discussing these topics has yielded more introspection and shifting in our views. Right now, it's such a transformative time to be alive. New ideas and changing perspectives are happening all the time, and all of us are part of it. But none of us will be able to escape the winds of the coming moral storm.